Welcome into WarUp on the WPIAL AA style here tonight. Jeff Upson, Greg Warnock with you here. And Jeff, obviously, typically our shows, they go pretty long, especially this time of year when we're talking the postseason and recapping and previewing the next week. So we're going to break this up into two parts. For those of you who may be looking to hear about the AAA side, we're going to break that down for you tomorrow. But today it's just going to be focused on the AA side. So, Jeff, not your favorite side. I know AAA is where it's at for you, but, we're going to do
Yeah,
AA tonight.
right. Yeah. I mean, our shows go as long as your computer takes to boot up. I mean, that's why we're behind schedule right now, is because you're well, there's three people at fault. It's Tristan and TC Warner, because they recorded an episode of their, I don't even know why they have a podcast. Their show is maybe like three people listen to it. Despite the really funny stories within the show. So they were recording prior to, so we couldn't get on. And then when we did get on, you took 10 minutes, 15 minutes to have your Apple laptop from 1984 boot up. So yeah, we're a little bit behind the schedule, but we're going to do AAA tomorrow. I'll be a little bit more prepared for that. I got Flo's Wrestling Night in America on right now. So Austin DeSanto just lost. So I'll be kind of preoccupied watching that and doing the show. So we're going to give it a shot, Greg.
Well, I mean, it's a good thing you're doing AA then tonight, right? Since you're not as big of a fan. But, I was ready here at 8:45, and you told me I got to wait for a link. I guess the other thing, Jeff, if you want me to get a new computer, I mean, if you make so much money on these streaming from all these
Yeah.
these poor people, you make them buy all your streaming.
Yeah.
You could at least pay the people that are helping you a little bit more so I could get a computer. Jeez.
Yeah. You would think. I mean, I'm rolling in dough. I don't know if you know that or not. PA Power Wrestling is a publicly traded company worth, I don't know, $30,000 maybe total between all the equipment, and yeah, it's not a whole lot.
You're you're rolling in it for sure. Let's get to the wrestling. How shall we?
Let's do it.
AA side of the WPIAL at 107 pounds. Javion Chambers of Highlands went into it as the favorite, and he showed it. Two falls, close to a major, 7-0 decision in the semi, then a major in the finals. Beats Darius Simmons of Burgestown, who had a very good tournament in the final. Angelo Bonai of Central Valley finishing in third place. Overall, I guess not too much surprise, I would say, at 107, I guess, for number 3 seed Rocco DiCario of Derry. He was the one that finishes in 6th place. Good tournament for Braden Hanning, of Jefferson Morgan, who finished in 4th as the 6th seed. But overall, the top seeds ended up prevailing.
Yeah, and actually, I thought Warren Wolfslegel from Elizabeth Forward, he had a good tournament. He beat DiCario, who had beat him the week prior at the section tournament. But yeah, there was no real surprises here. We knew Chambers was going to come in as I'd say the heavy favorite, being an upperclassman. But Simmons, he got 2 decisions to get into the finals. He had a pretty tough road with Guzak from South Park, and then Hanning from Jefferson Morgan. So not a whole lot of surprise there. I thought Angelo Bonnie wrestled well, as he had a couple nice wins, and he wrestled Chambers pretty tough. I mean, that was the closest match that Chambers had. So, but again, nothing really too surprising. Wolfslegel beating DiCaro was kind of like the only one that was not expected, I guess you could say.
For the regional tournament coming up this weekend, Chambers ends up being the 3 seed. Obviously, they seed the district champions. Unfortunately for Chambers, he ends up getting on the same side as Keegan Bassett, Bishop McCourt. Santa Maria, Tussey Mountain ends up being the top seed there. A little bit disappointing that, Chambers won't get that opportunity to wrestle Santa Maria in a semi to take on Bassett.
Yeah, I mean, depending on, the way the brackets are, he ends up on the bottom half with Keegan Bassett, who he wrestled at the Midwinter Mayhem. They wrestled in the finals there. Keegan teched him. I forget how long it took, but he pretty much controlled the match. But Chambers, he's really good. Does he have enough to? The question for me is, can he finish top three here? Right.
Yeah.
I think Santa Maria. He's a junior. He's a returning state medalist. He had a really good year last year. He had a great run from districts all the way through state. So I think he's going to be a problem on the top for if you look at some of where the other WPIAL guys are. I like Jacob Guzek's first match. I think he can beat Anthony from River Valley, but then of course you run into Santa Maria. Hanning and Lisowski that's probably going to be the most anticipated matchup that I'm watching in that first round. Lisowski is a really tough freshman, kind of battle tested, so I think he's favored there against Hanning, but they're two freshmen in their first regional tournament, so you don't really know what to expect. But I would say Chambers, despite being on the same side, I feel like he has a decent chance, a good path to get to the semifinals. I think Garrett Wyant from Chestnut Ridge is another one who I wouldn't say he's inconsistent, but he's had some matches where he hasn't wrestled to his fullest potential. I still favor Chambers there, but Wyant is certainly a very tough wrestler. I've been impressed with him, but I've also been, like, okay, you shouldn't have lost that match. So there's a ton of good matches here. I love the lightweights at the WPIAL. I think they have a good chance in a lot of these weights to make some noise.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. A lot of these early matches, I think it's going to be, you never realize, like, hey, this could be one of the spots that's going to end up taking you to Hershey, but it really could come down to those beginning matches. And, because you look at those top three, I feel like they're pretty set in stone, right? Bassett, Santa Maria, and Chambers. And then from there, it's, who's going to show up and wrestle to take 4 through 8, right? Like, we'll see how it breaks down. But I think at the end of the day, I like Darius Simmons to get through. Do you like any other WPIAL wrestlers to potentially get through?
That's a good question. When you look at the bracket, I wouldn't be shocked to see Simmons get through. Did you say he was going to get through? I can't remember.
Yeah, he's one I feel like should get through to the state.
But the other thing is he could not either. I would say Chambers is obviously their best bet. And I would push back on the top 3 are very set. I think the top 2 are pretty much set. But, Chambers and Wyant are ranked 6th. Chambers is 6th. Wyant is 9th in the state. So 6 versus 9 in the state in the regional semifinals. That, to me, is maybe more of a toss-up than meets the eye. But I still believe that Chambers qualifies, right? I think Simmons, if he can get past Carter Christ in that first match against from Conwell Township, who's a sophomore, undersized last year, still probably not a full-size 107-pounder, but Simmons being a senior, I think he has a good chance of getting that match and potentially winning that one, which I think would set him up nicely to get into the semifinals. But Rocco DiCario depends on which one shows up. Gabe Shawley's pretty solid. I've been impressed with him all season. I don't know. There's a lot of guys here. Like, okay, the first 3, Keegan Bassett, Chambers, Santa Maria, right? And then you look at the other spots that get filled up. I think Wyant fills up one of those. I think Gage Shawley fills up another one. I wouldn't be shocked to see Lisowski finish in the top 6. Carter Chris could do it as well. So I don't know. I think Simmons has a good chance, but he's got to win that. He's got to win that first match. He's got to beat Carter Christ.
Yeah, no doubt, and that's why I think these early matches are going to be huge. You never know who's going to fall down in those consolations, but at the same time, I think these early matches, the further you can advance in the winners bracket, the better off you're going to be overall.
100%.
114 pounds. It was a championship for Preston Bubash of Elizabeth Forward. He had a big win over Bruce Anderchak of Quaker Valley, 3-2 in the final to win the WPIAL gold. Clayton Ely was your third place finisher. Ely from McGuffey. He defeats Alex Medlin of Best Center for third and fourth. First off, thoughts on the WPIAL championship?
Yeah, I mean, Bubash, we knew he was close, right? We didn't get to see them at the Allegheny County tournament. The last time we saw them was Chartiers, Houston, which was a long time. I mean, that feels like a lifetime ago. And that was just a 1 point match there. Bubash, I feel like watching him continue to get better as the year goes on, and get into a groove as a freshman, right? Beats a very tough, another freshman, Clay Neely, by major 16-4, right? I think him and Anderchak could wrestle 10 times and it's 5-5, right? And they're probably all no more than a 2 point margin win. So, yeah, I think they could absolutely meet again this next couple weeks, or definitely next week. But you look at Ely, I thought he wrestled well, beating Medlin. Victor Wagner, I thought, had a good tournament despite getting pinned by Ely in the first period. He pretty much was dominant in that 5th place match as well, and he wrestled Medlin tough in the quarterfinals. But yeah, the story there is Bubash and Anderchak. I think those two are clearly ahead, above the rest of the field in the WPIAL.
You look at the Southwest region, and District 6 is pretty tough here in the Southwest region. Obviously, you have Bishop McCourt's Eli Herring, who's on the bottom half of the bracket, and obviously a very tough Easton Mull of Chestnut Ridge as well at the top. But also got guys like Max Dingus, Caleb Hummel. It's going to be tough. I like Bubash and Anderchak, to hang tough and potentially get those, one of those 7 spots. But it's going to be tough sledding.
100% it is. I mean, you look at how deep this is. I mean, Eli Herring's number 3 in the state. Has a win over Mull. Mull is a returning state 4th place finisher. So, I mean, this is a guy who's not worried. Not saying he's not worried about the regional, but I mean, he's finished in the top 4 in the state of Pennsylvania. So he's got higher aspirations. I'm sure, looking at the way the bracket falls, you have Mull on the top, Herring on the bottom. Anderchak, I think, has a favorable first match with Tucker Smith from Everett, who's just a freshman. But I really think him and Max Dingus could be a war. And Dingus has just been so solid. He's been really just good for a freshman. Trains at M2 Training Center, so those guys get a lot of good looks in the practice room. I think Ely is kind of the one where I like that first match with Carson Mowry from Central. I think that's a very winnable match for him. But I also wouldn't be shocked if Mowry comes out and gets a win. Aiden Raplogle from Northern Bedford's also not bad. Him and Victor Wagner should be a good match, but I honestly think Raplogle is probably favored in that. Bubash, honestly, him winning the WPIAL title helped him immensely, because I think he gets to the quarterfinals, and I think he has a very good chance to make it to the semifinals, and put himself in a position to wrestle a guy like Eli Herring. So him winning that, I think, paid dividends, whereas Bruce Anderchak, his reward is getting Max Dingus in the quarterfinals. Caleb Hummel, on the other hand, I mean, this guy is a junior, 2-time state qualifier, is looking to get on the podium for the first time. It's down to 114. He's number 8 in the state right now. I mean, District 6 is just loaded. And then you throw in District 5 too, because obviously we know how good Easton Mull is as well. So, yeah, it's going to be tough sledding for the WPIAL here.
With that said, with 7 spots going to the state tournament, I feel confident Bubash and Anderchak are in that top 7. Despite those 4, mentioned in those 2. The question is, I don't know if there's a third guy that could get it out from the WPIAL 114.
Yeah, and again, you had mentioned at 107 is winning in the championship round is so important to set yourself up for success to get into that top 7, right? I think Clay Neely, if he's going to have a chance, he has to beat Carson Mowry, and he has a bye in the first round. He gets into Carson Mowry. I think he's got to get to the quarterfinals and then put himself in a position to get a win, right? He's going to have to beat somebody pretty tough to get into that top 8 though, or top 7, right? So the placement round. So it's going to be tough, but I agree with you. I think Bubash and Anderchak they're right there with some of those other guys. So I think they're going to get through, but it's just a matter of, can a guy like Clay Neely or even Alex Medlin, can they find a way to get through?
121 pounds. Austin Kasanovic of Avonworth, dominant on his way to a WPIAL title. 3 tech falls and a major decision in the final over Carter Thomas of Burrell to win it. Another guy who, Jeff, came into this as a number 4 seed, Dylan Bateman of Derry, got upset in the quarters 3-1 to Tucker Main of McGuffey, but then battles his way back, gets 4 total wins, including avenging that loss to Tucker Main 8-1 for third and fourth. So Bateman battles back for third from Derry.
Yeah, and I thought Carter Thomas wrestled well, getting to the finals there and beating Noah Collins. But the story here is Austin Kasanovic. I mean, he's just been absolutely dominant. I mean, he's wrestled Tucker Main. This has got to be like 4 times, and I think he's teched him at least twice, maybe 3 times. And Tucker Main's pretty solid, right? So Kasanovic, I think he's definitely riding a wave into the regional tournament. I think Carter Thomas is wrestling well right now. Those Burrow guys seem to peak in February and March, and I think he's wrestling well. And Bateman, on the other hand, he's a freshman. He's young. He's got almost 50 matches already this year as a freshman. Loses to Tucker Main, but isn't deterred by that. He battles back. He really just kind of rolls through, gets 2 tech falls, and then decision over Collins and avenges that to Main. So Bateman's had some really quality wins this year. It's just, can he string it all together to get into the post, or to continue the postseason and make it to Hershey? That's the question.
121 in the Southwest region. You have a stud at the top in Dom Deputy of Chestnut Ridge, a guy who's looking for his first state gold after a pair of runner-up finishes. He's going to be tough to beat, Jeff. And you look at the bottom, Tanner Gano of Bald Eagle area. How do you like Kasanovic matching up against Gano?
I mean, Tanner Gano's, I think, on a different level, but Kasanovic, he's not far off, I don't think. I mean, just the way he's been wrestling as of late, I just think he's got a hot hand, and I think that goes a long way in the postseason. I think if you're wrestling well, you can beat guys that you're, quote, not supposed to, just because you have that momentum. And we see it all the time, right? I think he is in a good position to make it to the semifinals. I would be shocked if he doesn't make it to the semifinals here. I like his first match against Mo Valley. He's going to get the winner of Collins and Smith. I like him there in that one. Bateman, I really think he has a favorable first-round matchup with Duluhas from Westmont Hilltop. I think that's a winnable match for him to set him up with a Tanner Gano. I think Carter Thomas, on the other hand, I think he may have benefited the most from making the WPIAL finals, kind of like we talked about at 14 with Boo Bash. Carter Thomas has a very clear path, in my opinion, to the semifinals. Connor Myers is right there. I like Connor Myers, but I think Carter Thomas, I think the way he's been wrestling, despite getting beat by Kasanovic by Major in the finals, I think he's favored there. He's been to the regional tournament a couple times already, but Myers is tough, so I'm not looking past him. The matchup that I'm probably most looking forward to for a WPIAL guy in that first quadrant is Tucker Main and Jack Silfies from Bishop McCourt. He's 19-19 on the year, but that's a McCourt schedule, so I think Tucker Main is looking for maybe a little bit of a bounce back here after the WPIAL tournament, and he could start it off by getting into quarterfinals, beating a pretty tough freshman, Jack Silfies.
And you look at that matchup, that could be one that decides spot 6 or 7, right?
Yep.
So I think you look at some of these, round of 16 matches, and you got to think, okay, if you lose this one, your chances do go down as far as getting in that spot to Hershey. So that's going to be a great matchup for sure. It's one that I have highlighted as well as one to look forward to and see who comes out on top, as it's going to play a big factor there. As far as the WPIAL goes at 121 pounds, Jeff, obviously we mentioned Kasanovic, and you like Thomas a lot as well to make it. Do you think a third can get out at 121?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be tough. I could see a Dylan Bateman getting out. as well, but he's going to have to beat somebody that's, he's going to have to beat a Connor Myers or Jack Silfies in order to do that. Obviously Dom and Tanner are the two top guys, but I think Kasanovic is kind of in that next kind of tier down, right? Maybe in a tier of his own, because if you look at the difference between him and Carter Thomas, I don't think it was too close, right? But I think Connor Myers, Jack Silfies, those guys could potentially cause roadblocks to a Bateman or Noah Collins. Honestly, I think Noah Collins or Dylan Bateman both have a pretty good chance, but they each have to win their first matches. Collins has got to beat Smith, and I think Thomas has to get to the semifinals.
Yeah, and then obviously I think for Tucker Maine, it's just going to be down to that Silfies match, and we'll see how that shakes out. 127 pounds, Antonio Bonai of Central Valley. He was dominant 2 falls and 2 tacks to win the WPIAL gold, and he does it over Danny Smith of Burgestown. Smith had a big win in the semifinals, Jeff. He knocks off Giovanni Beatrice of Derry by fall in the first period.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I was too shocked by that. Smith has been wrestling pretty well. He's a junior, and Beatrice is he's tough, but I mean he's been in positions where he can drop matches. He comes back 4/3. Outside of the top 3 here, the WPIAL is not super strong. I mean, Bonai, it was a fall in 9 seconds, 2 tech falls, and then a fall in the final. So I mean, I feel like he is in an island by himself, and then Dan Smith's kind of in another sandbar type area, and then you have the rest of the field, and it's Beatrice is kind of right there as well. But it's the WPIAL's going to have a hard 27 is not favorable for the WPIAL.
Yeah, and when you look at the region, Bonai comes into the tournament as the number 2 seed. 1, do you like him to get to the final? And then 2, can anyone else get out from the WPIAL here?
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at Bonai has lost to Eric Carlisle. He lost him at the Fred Bell tournament. And you look, he's at the top, right? The good thing is Bonai's on the bottom away from him. The problem is on the bottom you have a couple landmines, and I think Austin Carfley from Bishop McCourt is going to be the first one. And then I think either a Griffin Tinsman or Trenton Wiley is another one. I still favor Bonai 100%, right? Okay, 99.9%. I favor him to get to the finals. However, Austin Carfley is dangerous. He's young. He's a freshman. It just depends on what Austin Carfley shows up. Tinsman, so for example, he was up, I think like 14-2 or 14-1 on Griffin Tinsman at the District 6 tournament, ends up getting pinned by him. Tinsman, if you remember, was a late entrance to the state tournament. Somebody got hurt and they backed out, and he filled in with like 2 days notice and ends up going to Hershey in 2023 and gets a win, right, on a very short notice. The guy's a gamer, right? I still think Bonai is the clear guy here, and I think the question is more about, can he avenge that loss to Carlisle that he lost to at the Fred Bell? That's to me the bigger question.
And then when you look at the rest of the WPIAL, you mentioned guys like Danny Smith, Giovanni Beatrice. You just mentioned a few names, right? You got Carlisle taking a spot, Bonai, Carfley, Tinsman, as far as guys that are likely to get one of the 7 spots. Can the WPIAL sneak another wrestler or 2 like Smith or Beatrice in?
Yeah, I think Daniel Smith has a better chance than Beatrice. I still think it's going to be I still think it's going to be tough, right? So you have Carlisle as the guy with Bonai right there. They're 5-10 in the state currently. And then I think you have Carfley and Tinsman and sort of another tier. They are 14 and 15 in the state. So how many is that? That's what, 3?
That's
4?
That's 4.
4?
Yeah.
I think there's a next tier with like an Avery Gable, Burke Niebauer, I think they're in another one. Niebauer and Gable are both kind of in that next one. Trendon Wiley is also one that I wouldn't look past. How many is that? I'm not
That's
counting.
another three, right?
Okay.
Gable, Niebauer, Wiley.
So you're gonna have to get over one of them. But Daniel Smith, I think, is in a better position from the bracket perspective to get through, because he's gonna have a chance to wrestle Avery Gable right out of the gate, right? So that's an easy, like, hey, I win this one. I could be in the semifinals, because I would favor him over Wyatt Close, from Northern Bedford, who's not bad either, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be tough. Let me just put it that way. If I was a betting man, I would say Bonai would be the only one, but history tells us that the way the bracket falls, there's a good chance that one of these other WPIAL guys will be in a position to make it out. Just a question of who.
Well, and you look at the way the bracket is, right? So Smith and Gable, in my opinion, winner is going to get a top 6 spot because they're going to have a really good shot to get to the semis.
Yep.
Provided they could beat Klaus of Northern Bedford. Beatrice and Niebauer wrestle right out of the gates as well. So those two matches, Beatrice Niebauer, Smith Gable, are ones really to decide, in my opinion,
Yeah.
the spots, right? Because if Beatrice wins that match, he'll drop down if he loses to Carlisle, and he'll get the probably the loser then of probably be Wyatt Klaus. So then let's say Beatrice beats Niebauer, he's going to have to beat Klaus as well. But those are two matches that, he's got to win in order to get to the state tournament.
Right.
So Smith and Beatrice, I think, both have an opportunity to. I mean, where they're at in the bracket, you're not like, oh man, I'm right into where I fall. It's like I get right back from Carlisle to Tinsman, right? It's like you got a shot.
100%, and I feel like you get those early matchups that determine your fate, right? So I mean, hey, I gotta win this first one, right? I mean, there's a lot of pressure there, but I think you don't have to go into that thinking like, what do I need to do? Who do I need to beat? Like, win your first match, right? Just keep on advancing, and they both have all three of them have winnable matches, right? I just think that at the end of the day, I could tell you a lot sooner. I can tell you on Friday if they're going to have anyone other than Bonai make it through.
Yeah. 133 pounds, Anthony Mucci of Derry. He was your champion in a very tough weight. He ends up winning 3-2 in the final over Drake McClure of Bentworth. McClure ends up beating Emmett Wolf in the semi. Mucci beats Mason Wright in a semi. And then it ends up being Jacob Stewart who comes back after a quarterfinal loss to place third. He beats both Emmett Wolf 6-4 and Mason Wright 3-1. And that was after he lost to Wright 7-0 in the quarter. So Jacob Stewart, after a tough quarterfinal loss, bounces back for third, Wright fourth, and Wolf fifth.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob Stewart was definitely the highlight here. Despite Mucci getting another win over Drake McClure, which those guys have wrestled 98 times already. But Stewart, for me, is like he kind of exploded here. 28-9 coming into the tournament. He's had some bumps, but again, those Borough guys, they seem to be they peak towards this time of year, right? Team states, then early in sections and districts and all the way into regional. So I feel like they have a good system, right? That allows them to do well here in this time. And look, he had a tough first round matchup with Ferrix from Beaver. He only beat him 8-4 before losing to Mason Wright. But it seems like then he just turned on a switch. Let's not forget he had to beat Joseph Betts from Valley 3-2 in tiebreaker just to get in to that top 8, right? So, or excuse me, to get into the top 6. So that was a tough match. Then you beat Emmett Wolf 6-4, and then you avenge that loss, beat Mason Wright. I think Stewart is riding a wave into the regional tournament, but I still think Mucci because look what Anthony did to Mason Wright. I mean, Tech fought him. I think him and McClure are kind of on a different level. The question here is what level can those other guys make it to?
Yeah, because if you look at 133, you have obviously the best in the nation at Jack's Forest at the top. And then you have Caden Judice, Bald Eagle, who's a solid returning state medalist as well. But then after that, the WPIAL is, you got to like how they kind of shape out, right? You got Mucci and McClure, like you mentioned, different level, but even Stewart, Wolf, Wright, I mean, they have a shot to get to the state tournament.
I agree. I think you're right. I mean, you know what you're going to get in Jack's Forest. I think Judice is a tough out. Although Mucci's wrestling pretty well, and Judice he's going to have a very, very tough road. So Judice is, by finishing second to Jack's Forest, he's going to have to go through Mason Wright, likely Deshaun Valentine, who's not bad from District 5. And if he makes it to the semifinals, he's probably going to have Mucci. But I mean, like Brady Kostick is pretty solid from Richland. He was the third out of District 6. So, I mean, you look at the amount of first-round matches that are must-wins. Jacob Stewart, Chris Gibson, Stewart's got to win that one. That's you got to put yourself in a position to get to the quarterfinals. Drake McClure, Ace Foster, I think McClure wins that one. Honestly, I think McClure, having finished second, probably has the most favorable route to the semifinals, because I think Mucci could have a tough time with maybe like a Brady Kostick if he makes it out. I just think, McClure has a pretty clear shot to the semifinals. Mason Wright and Judice right off the bat, like that's a tough first round draw. You look at that third and fourth place match and how critical that was. Mason Wright now draws the guy who is currently sitting at number 3 in the state, right? So it's tough, but I think they have much like 127, they have chances. There's opportunities here for them to get wins.
Yeah, and you know what? Right where he falls, he'll get a quarterfinal matchup with, potentially, again, a guy like Hovanek or Carter Cadis. Obviously he's wrestled Carter Cadis how many times now? Cadis has a chance to even pull off that win, to get to the quarterfinals. So I think, Wright, although he, has that tough one early against Judice, he's got a chance to battle back. But I would agree. I like Drake, McClure, and Mucci to both get to the semis. And it'd be interesting to see how, Stewart, Wright, Wolf, they got to win. Like, Wolf's got to be able to win a match against Kostick, and Stewart's got to win that match against Gibson if they want any chance to get to the state tournament.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, if Stewart wrestles like he did on the backside of the WPIAL tournament, he should make it through. He should beat Chris Gibson, lose to Jack's Force, and then come down. And, he's going to have to beat like a Kostick or a Trip Watson. But these are all winnable matches. I mean, you look at the rankings, like these guys are all like District 5, like Valentine is good, but I don't think he's necessarily someone that's going to be knocking off some of these tougher WPIAL guys. I think Emmett Wolf and Mason Wright and Stewart all are in that mix. I could see the WPIAL getting, I could see them getting 4 through here, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would agree with that as well. And obviously we talked about the depth of that weight class throughout the season. So, not surprising at all if it does happen. 139 pounds, Lucas Barr of McGuffey. He had a great tournament, 2 falls and a tech to get to the finals, and then a 10-4 win over Julian Bertucci of Borough in the finals. Bertucci had a big win in the semis, 5-4 over Matthew Dana of Quaker Valley, and Dana ends up battling back for third.
Yeah, I mean, look how close some of these matches were. Dana and Bertucci, that was a 5-4 match, and you look down at the semi or the consolations, and Dana just beat Burford 19-4, right? I mean, so you look at the disparities here, and part of that is the new scoring system, but I mean, it's just, you're talking about a decision to a tech fall over guys that aren't really that far apart, right? Burford he beats Clem 12-1. Lucas Barr has just continued to be dominant, right? Lucas Barr he's the most solid guy that McGuffey has right now, and he's been wrestling so well. I really like him and the way he's wrestling. I think Bertucci is getting that win over Dana, I think was good for him when you look at the bracket. But Angelo Emilio also, I was impressed with him. He had a win over Woods, and then he beat Brett Klim for 1 to take 5th. So I thought that was a good performance by him.
Lucas Barr ends up getting the top seed at 139. Sam Herring, Bishop McCourt down at number 2. And when you look at this way, Jeff, obviously because of the fact that Herring and Gideon Bracken wrestled in the same district, Barr is going to have to, well, first off, Aiden Burford gets the tough draw, gets Bracken in that opening round. But looks like Barr and Bracken are destined to meet in the semis.
Yeah, I think they absolutely are, and they're number 4 and number 6 in the state. Bracken is somebody who was 5th in the state last year. Barr has made it to the state tournament twice prior, but has not finished on the podium. So, I'll give the slight edge to Bracken, considering he's a senior. He's been to Hershey every year, and he finished 5th last year. So I think he's in a good position. But him and Lucas Barr, I think, could be an absolute war. There's a lot of landmines here. I'll just be honest with you, Greg. There's a lot of landmines that I don't feel super confident in some of these matches. I feel like Klim has a good draw with the 5-2. Burford does not have this good draw with Bracken, right? So almost like Klim gets the better draw because he gets out to the quarterfinals. Burford's likely going to lose to Bracken in that first round. Angelo Emilio from North Catholic has a pretty tough Dawson Lomason from Bald Eagle area who's been really solid. Bald Eagle area is very well battle tested. They've been to some of the best tournaments in the state. And then you look at Bertucci. He has Connor Gano from PO. That Gano is not bad. Like he's wrestled pretty decently this past couple of weeks, and maybe he doesn't have the record to show it, but I think he could be a tough out for Bertucci, even though I have Bertucci favored in that one. And look, Bertucci's been wrestling really well. He was at least one place away from making it to Hershey last year, so I think he's clearly in the mix. The question is, can he get on a roll and get to the semifinals? Because I think he could. I think he can beat Braden Durst. In fact, I kind of favor him in that one. Durst he's good, but I think Bertucci's has been wrestling on a different level. And then Sam Herring's at the bottom, so I feel like I think it clearly is going to be Sam Herring in the finals, and then top half it's going to be either Barr or Bracken.
Yeah, and if Bertucci can win that first one against Gano and ends up beating Durst as well, you look at the bottom half, right? Matt Dana, he'll get Herring if he wins that first match, but then Dana will set up to wrestle, let's say, a Durst in the consolation bracket, and that should help propel Matt Dana to get to the consolation semis and secure a top 6 bid.
Yeah, I think 3 is definitely going to happen. I think they're going to find a way to get 3 through. I think obviously Barr, Bertucci, and Dana are going to be the favorites to make that happen. I just can't see. I don't know if I necessarily see a path for Burford, considering he has Bracken in that first round. But he's dangerous too. I mean, he can knock guys off. He could beat like a Lomason. He could beat a Gano or a Durst along the way. It's just, you just don't know. I mean, it's like Drake Burford. I mean, he just could headlock his way to Hershey. That could happen.
145 pounds in the WPIAL, Lucas Boyer of Elizabeth Forward. He was your champion, defeating Owen Lehue of Knock 7-0 in the finals. And one of the guys you mentioned, Jeff, Antonio Perkins of Valley, got to the semis as Victor Bonus of McGuffey was upset, the third seed in the opening round, to Jeremiah Guess of Derry. So that helps propel Perkins to the semis, but he comes back for 5th place, and it ends up, for Victor Bonus falling all the way to 7th.
Yeah, this was a weird weight, right? I mean, outside of Lucas Boyer, who we expected to come away with the title, and I'd argue that Lehue was the clear second here. Victor Bonus, losing the guess, I think opened up the path for Perkins, and Perkins is a very solid freshman. Caleb Patton battles, he wins 21-18 over Caden Crawford from Burrell in sudden victory to get to the 3rd and 4th place match. Workovich, he ends up winning that 8-7, right? After beating Ryder Go and then losing to Luke Boyer, he drops down, and Patton makes the semifinals, has that wild 21-18 sudden victory match. I mean, could you imagine that match? And what I didn't see it, but I can imagine it was probably pretty good. Workovich was the one that I was like, man, like he can make a run here. I mean, he beat Bonus, he beat Perkins, and then he beats Patton to finish third. Take away from this is he's battle tested, he's ready to go. He was fourth in the Eastern section, right? I mean, Perkins was second, Crawford was third. He's finished ahead of both of those guys. So I think he's wrestling well, but Boyer is clearly the top guy here. And I think Lehue is kind of in a tier below, and then I think the rest are kind of all fighting for the scraps.
As far as the regional tournament, obviously you have the best in the nation in Bo Bassett at the top. But from there, you're going to have a great semifinal, Joseph Garshnick and Lucas Boyer on a collision course.
Yeah, so this is a fun weight class. Not just because you have Bo Bassett, the number one guy in the nation, but Lucas Boyer is going to have some. It's going to be a strong field. The top WPIAL guy here, despite having the we'll call it the second seed, he's on a half with Joseph Garshnick, and we should all know how good Joseph Garshnick is. He's number 3 in the state. He's a 2-time state medalist, finished 5th last year, 8th the year prior. Just a very, very solid, fundamentally, just a brawler type guy, right? He's going to have to get through Patton, which I think he does. But Dawson Schaefer from Berlin is kind of the landmine here. He's the unknown to me. He was down at 39. I got to see him at the Panther Holiday Classic, and he looked really, really good there. Just for a freshman, he's super long. He was out for at least a month, maybe longer, with an injury. He comes back and he moves up to 145, wins the District 5 title. And in doing so, he beats a pretty solid opponent in Aaron Ickes from Chestnut Ridge, who sets that up to a match with Caden Crawford. So I think Schaefer and Bonus, I think Schaefer wins that. But I think Garshnick that could be a wild match. But Boyer's going to have I can see Boyer making the finals, but he's going to have a really good weekend.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, though, I do like him to get to the semis and obviously get a spot.
Same.
To Hershey. Now, the question is, can anyone else get out from the WPIL?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question, right? I don't know. I would say no, just based on the amount of talent that's there. But I mean, Dawson Schaefer to me is an unknown. Jacob Wilson's another guy. He was third out of District 6, who's really solid out of Central Cambria. Lehue, so I think he has a very favorable match with Filak from Penn Cambria. I think Lehue could win that. I think Lehue can make it to the semifinals. I think he's definitely on a good side where he can beat Anikis, or he can beat Crawford, who was in the same bracket as him last week. So I'm going to say 2. I'm going to say 2, Greg.
Yeah, I think just looking at how the bracket shapes out, right, Lehue has a chance to get to the quarters. Workowicz, if he wrestles the way he did this past weekend, can get to the quarters. Those two guys, if Ickes, and obviously Bassett will win, but Ickes wins as well, those two guys drop down and would face one another in a consolation to potentially try to get to that consolation semi. So where they're at in the bracket, I mean, and then if you look at the consolations and how they fall down, it might be a guy like a Perkins or a Patton or a Bonus feeding into those guys. So they're going to beat each other in the consolation to kind of get that one spot. And that's why I'm thinking it will be 2 as well. But they're going to all kind of, again, battle each other to get that spot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just looking at the brackets, I think they have a very good chance to get 2, Lucas Boyer, but I think Lehue's in a good position. But I don't like picking against Chestnut Ridge guys, because those guys they show up and their records can be deceiving in a lot of ways. And Ickes, I mean, he's a senior. He's a 3-time regional qualifier. He's pretty solid, but you just don't know, right?
152 pounds. Mason Horwat of Derry had himself a tournament. Tech falls his way through the entire thing to win the WPIAL gold. In doing so, he defeats Jonah Early of Fraser by tech fall. Early had a big 7-1 win over Gavin McRae of Freedom in the semis, where McRae ended up coming back for third.
Yeah, I mean, you look at how dominant Horwat was, but I mean, let's not take away how deep the rest of this bracket was. You know, Eardley is a very solid wrestler, and had a good win over McRae. McRae is another one who's just been wrestling well all season. Look what he did to Jack Dimert of Quaker Valley. Pinned him in 55 seconds. And then Dimert, I don't know if he was hurt or what, he then drops out. Battles Eardley tough. I think Zanella had a really good tournament as well, beating Garrett Newman to get into that. But, I mean, McRae, outside of that match with Eardley, he got all falls. Fall into the Conci semis, fall into the third place match. So I think he's wrestling really well. I think Braxton Carr, you know, he had maybe a few steps back. He finishes in 7th. He loses to some guys that he had beat previously. So, but Mason Horwat, man, he's really good. He's been wrestling solid right now, and I'm excited to see him. He has a chance to do very well in Hershey.
Yeah, and he's got obviously a tough opponent at the top in Devin Magro of Bishop McCourt. Those two seem like they're destined to wrestle in the final. When you look at the rest of the bracket, though, Jeff, you know, how does the rest of the WPIAL fare when you talk about the depth that they did have at this weight?
Yeah, I mean, so the good thing is unlike some of the weights prior is they've got some very winnable matches, and I would say they're favored in a lot of them. So we'll just go through from top to bottom. McRae, I think, makes it to the quarterfinals without issues. Obviously, he runs into the top-ranked wrestler in the state, Devin Magro. But he makes it to the quarterfinals. I think Eardley 100% makes it to the quarterfinals. I think Garrett Newman has a very good chance to make the quarterfinals. So right away, you got 3 WPIAL wrestlers in the quarterfinals on the top half. On the bottom half, I also like Braxton Carr, despite his not a great weekend. I don't like picking against Chestnut Ridge wrestlers. Fight is a solid wrestler for Chestnut Ridge, but Carr, that's a winnable match for Carr. That's not something that even though he was 7th in the district and he's going against a district champ, I still think that's a winnable match for him. Zanella, another winnable match against Ryder Smith from Juniata. Logan Noyes, Mardula is a very solid wrestler. I think he is favored in that, but I think Noyes is I think he's good enough to win that one. And obviously Mason Horwat. So I think Mason Horwat makes the finals without any really bumps. But to be honest with you, I could see all the WPIAL guys make it to the quarterfinals. As crazy as that sounds, I honestly could see it happen.
Yeah, and especially just based on this past weekend, right? Like some of those toss-ups, Logan Noyes had a great weekend.
Yes.
He went into it as the number 8 seed and comes away as the 5th place finisher and winning a couple of big matches. I mean, he was in the the match to essentially try to advance, and he beats Alex Wiley in overtime, gets the takedown over Wiley of Riverview to advance, but then he gets a big win, a major decision over Braxton Carr, and then even though he dropped the match to McRae, he comes back and beats Garrett Newman too. So
right,
yeah, I mean, to your point, he's definitely in that match. A lot of toss-up matches, right? I guess you could say on that bottom half, but it's possible that the WPIAL does have a strong showing here in this weight.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, I like Horwat to make it. I think Eardley finds a way through as well. I think McRae has a very good chance, and I think Zanella could do the same. So 3 or 4 potentially, because District 6 isn't super deep here, and neither is District 5. So that opens up a lot for the WPIAL. And that's kind of what you've seen in the past is some of these weights are just dominated by one district or the other. I think the WPIAL has a very good chance here to get and they have a good core group of guys that I think are more than capable. McRae, Erdley are guys that I expect to win.
160 pounds. The WPIAL very deep here at this weight class, probably the best weight class they have. You had the top seed, Gabe Lilly of Elwood City, coming in on the same half with Ryan Salashi of Frazier, who had a tough weekend in the sections, does avenge his loss to a very talented freshman in Alec Palco, beats him 2-1 in the quarters, and Salashi beats Gabe Lilly 5-2 in the semis to get to the final. Owen Ipsick of Bentworth, he ends up a wild match in the semifinals against Annie Lewis of the Neighborhood Academy, who beats Ewan Olson of Derry 5-1 in the quarters. Ipsick wins 15-14 and then goes on to major Salashi 10-2 in the finals. Palco had a solid return after that loss to Salashi. He ends up pulling off 4 wins to come in third place. Lilly comes in fourth place, and then Cheney Lewis in fifth, and Ewan Olson drops all the way down to seventh. This is a deep weight.
I mean, it's very deep. So let's look at Cheney Lewis. Cheney Lewis Jr. 1 point away from making it to the finals, right? 15-14. Falls all the way down to fifth, right? Because he runs into another freshman, Alec Palco, who beats him 12-1. Then he beats Catula. But I will say him beating Ewan Olson was huge. That was a rematch of the Eastern Sectional Finals, and Lewis avenges that, winning 5-1. Salashi avenges, that was another match that he had lost the week prior. He avenges that loss to Alec Palco. But on top of that, he beats Gabe Lilly. So for me, Salashi had a solid weekend, but then Owen Ipsick, you look at what he did to him, he beat him 10-2 in the final. So you're like, okay, I can't make heads or tails of this. Honestly, the top 8 here are very, very solid. The fact that Ewan Olson is 7th should tell you all you need to know about the fact that this is a very deep weight class for the WPIAL. I think Owen Ipsick has established himself as the clear guy, though. Despite that wild 15-14 match, I think he's clearly the guy from the WPIAL, but there's a lot of other ones that are right there.
And it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out here in this regional tournament, because you got Melvin Miller, Bishop McCourt, returning state champ. But outside of that, I think the WPIAL does very well here in the Southwest region. And I want to make note, Jeff, Cheney Lewis and Owen Ipsick, they're on the bottom half together. They both win their first. They're battling again in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I mean, you very well could see some rematches. But looking at the bracket, I like the matchups for all the WPIAL guys. Palco, I think, gets to the quarterfinals. Salashi, I think, is definitely going to get to the semifinals. And Catula could beat Caleb Sines from Myersdale to make it to the quarterfinals. Ewan Olson has a very favorable match with District 5 champ Landon Huffman. I think he wins that one. Gabe Lilly has the toughest draw, in my opinion, of all the WPIAL wrestlers. He has Braden Lasowski from Penns Valley. Very good wrestler. The Penns Valley guys are all pretty solid. They've wrestled a lot of tough matches. He's actually a 2-time regional place winner. 7th as a freshman, 8th as a sophomore. So he's already placed at the regional tournament before. There's a good chance he can do it again. But that's a really good matchup with Lilly and Lasowski. Cheney Lewis, man, if he wrestles Eckenrode like he wrestled Ipsick, he's going to win that one. But Eckenrode's a really good wrestler, and I could see Eckenrode winning that, and then giving everything he's got against Owen Ipsick. I think Ipsick definitely makes the finals here. It's just a matter of, can all these other guys, like, can Palco turn it on and make it to the top 7? Salashi, same thing. Ewan Olson, can he bounce back? Gabe Lilly. There's a lot of factors here. I think the WPIAL gets at least 4 through here. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, Melvin Miller's getting the top spot, but outside, honestly, I feel like they could get 5. I mean, and 6 isn't even out of the question, honestly. That'd be a bold prediction, right? But
yeah, I mean, 6 is bold.
Very fair.
Yeah, six is bold, but five is not. I think five absolutely can happen.
172 pounds, Jackson Angelo of Fraser. 3 falls to get to the final and then defeats Isaac Lisinski of Burrell 10-6 to win it. Lisinski had a fall and 2 techs to get to the finals. Noah Lehue of Best Center came in as the 5th seed, ends up finishing in 3rd place at 172.
Yeah, I mean Angelo is definitely the guy, but I think Lisinski is trying to close that gap. Obviously, with the 10-6 match, he was in that match. Lisinski, I think, is going to be able to prove how good he is in this upcoming weekend. I thought Lehue wrestled well, considering that he was second out of the South, and he beat Delara from Southmoreland 5-3, which I thought was a good one. And then he battled Teagard and beat him 1-0 before getting that win over Richie, who had a tiebreaker match against Delara. So I think Lehue's been wrestling good, and but Angelo's the guy, right? Angelo's the guy. Lisinski's the next one. Lehue and Richie are kind of in that next tier.
When you look at the region, you have top seed Jackson Angelo. And then you have from there, Jeff, Isaac Lisinski. It looks like he's going to be in a pretty good spot to potentially get the semis and maybe even the final. We could see a rematch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say that that's gonna happen, but sure, it absolutely could happen because you look at who else is down there. You look at Lisinski. I think him and Ezra Masood could be a really good match. Masood's somebody who's made it to the state tournament prior. I like him, but I could see that. Honestly, I could see Lehue battling him pretty tough. I do like Masood to come out on that bottom half to make it to the semifinals. But Lisinski, he's going to have his hands full with Grady Clark if Grady Clark is the guy. To be honest with you, he is one of the harder draws because he's going to have Dylan Stevens from United, who's not bad. Likely he's going to get Grady Clark, who is very dangerous, and he's been a little inconsistent at times, but I think Grady Clark has had a lot of really good wins that could propel him to the semifinals. You look at the other guys on the top half. Teagard's got a tough one with Reefer from Mo Valley. Obviously, Angelo being the top, I like him to get to the finals there. But Carter Durst is a very good freshman who has Marcus Ritchie. That's a tough match for Ritchie. Delara has a freshman from Bishop McCourt, Jaden O'Farrell, who just got into the lineup for Bishop McCourt. He's dangerous. And the other factor that we haven't really talked about is District 6 having a week off, right? I hear contradicting things where it's like the week off helps or the week off hurts. What is your opinion? Do you feel like if you have a week off, it helps, or do you feel like it you kind of get a little sluggish?
I think that it could matter with this opening match, and I think that the if they come out a little rusty, right, and maybe not at the top of their game coming out of the gates, that could be tough for some of these District 6 wrestlers. And we've talked about this throughout the entire show about how there's a lot of matchups in this round of 16 that really could decide to spot the Hershey.
Yeah.
So if they come out sluggish, and especially with District 7 coming after a very tough weekend and they come out and can pull out the win, especially in these, coin flip matches, that could play a factor. So it will be interesting to see how that week off does, affect some of these guys. But overall, to me, I think it's going to only matter in that opening match.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good point. You kind of get that first match under your belt, but how many times have we talked about how critical those first matches are, and how many matches are very, very close, right? You're not wrestling guys where it's I'm this higher seeded wrestler, I'm favored here. No, these are must win matches right out of the gate. Marcus Ritchie and Carter Durst, that's a must win match for Ritchie. Delara and O'Farrell, must win for Delara. Lisinski and Stevens, must win for Lisinski. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, but I'm very curious to see what that week off does for some of these other guys.
Overall, I like Angelo and Lisinski in this weight class to get to Hershey. Any other WPIAL guys do you think could get in that mix?
Yeah, I mean, obviously those top two are the ones, but I wouldn't be. I think Lehue makes it to the quarterfinals. I think he has a very good chance to punch through. Um, we'll see, because some of these District 6 is very deep here, but it's just a matter of where they fall, right? Um, we'll see. I think they definitely could get 2, potentially 3. I would be surprised if they got 4.
189, Brady Brown of Derry, 4 tech falls to win WPIAL gold. He does it over the unseeded Slayton Williams from Southside. Williams wins over number 6 seed Logan Shank 4-2 from Burrell. He beats number 3 seed Zeshawn Williams of Freedom 7-5. And then he knocks off number 2 seed Jake Mundorf of Ligonier Valley 7-2 to get to the final. So big weekend for Slayton Williams. And then the guy that you talked about, Jeff, Malachi Peak, he battles Wyatt Markovich of South Park Tough, beats him in overtime to get to the semis, and then he beats him once again in overtime for 3rd and 4th. So Peak and Markovich don't get the opportunity to wrestle Slayton Williams because they were both on the top half of the bracket, but they finished 3-4.
Yeah, so I think Peak is this. I mean, I just think he's the second best wrestler in the weight. I think Slayton Williams had a hell of a tournament. Look at all the wins that he had. He beat Shank 4-2, Zyshawn Williams 7-5, and then Mundorf. I was very surprised to see him beat Jake Mundorf, who for Ligonier Valley he's been wrestling very well. But let's look at Peak. Malachi Peak had 3 matches all go to overtime. He had obviously 2 with Markovich. But then in order to get there, he had to beat Zyshawn Williams in tiebreaker. That's somebody who he's wrestled a couple times, at least once before this season. So I think Peak has shown that he can grind out matches and get wins. I'm sure he'd like to not go into overtime. But I mean, he's been wrestling really well. I mean, let's not forget, he has at least 2 losses to Dominic Wills from Laurel, who doesn't even make it into the top 8. The Williams, they're not related, but I mean the 2 Williams, I think, wrestled very well. Brown is clearly like Mason Horwat. Brown is the guy, right? He's I don't see anybody in the WPIAL coming close to him, but Malachi Peak, if he can put it together, Slayton Williams, if he wrestles like he did this past weekend, yeah, they all have shots.
In this weight class, District 6 pretty strong. District 5 has a couple of solid guys here as well in the Southwest region. So you look at this weight, Jeff, how many guys from the WPIAL have a shot here to get to Hershey?
Well, I think Brown is obviously the clear favorite. However, he's on the same side. He's away from Caleb Close, but he also has Kyle Scott, who was a state medalist last year at 172. And you look at our current state rankings, Close is number 2, Scott is number 3, Brown is number 4. So you got the 2, 3, and 4 all in the same region, right? 2 of them are on the same side of the bracket. So while I say Brown is definitely going to get through, I can't say that he's definitely going to make the finals because he's going to have to get through Kyle Scott. District 6 and District 5 are pretty strong here. District 5 has Jaden Imler from Chestnut Ridge, who's been limited this year, but he's a regional place winner from a year ago. District 6 is pretty stacked. Obviously, Close and Scott are the 2 guys that are leading that, but you have CJ Penserio from Bishop McCourt, who's a regional place winner from last year as well. I think he has a very good chance to make it to the quarters against a Brady Brown. Now, I favor Brown in that, but that's a tough out for him. Zeshawn Williams, on the other hand, I like his draw getting Grove from Everett. And that's going to set up a match potentially with Slayton Williams, a rematch. So you have 2 of Williams wrestle potentially to get into the semifinals. That's why I say I like 2, because I think there's a good chance that some of those guys can find a way through. Malachi Peak has a tough one with Grayson Mahala from Richland, who's a very tough sophomore. And then obviously if Peak wins that, he's going to get Caleb Close. So I'm going to say 3. They get 3 through here. But I wouldn't be shocked if it was only 2.
Yeah, and really it's that Williams versus Williams. That's going to be a matchup to get into the top 6. I think just the question mark is if can Peak win that first one, and then if he doesn't, who falls down to him in the consolations.
Right.
So I think Peak has a shot, but at the end of the day, it's going to be just depending on how that first match shakes out. You look at Brown; he's got he's got a tough road though. Pensiro and Scott, just to try to get to Caleb Close. So he's going to have a definitely a challenging tournament. Not much like what he had this past weekend.
No, not at all. And I also like Huntington's Dom Perso from Huntington. I think he's going to be a tough. That's going to be a tough first match for Slayton Williams. So that to me will tell right out of the gate. Okay, if Williams can win that one, I think he's in a very good position to make the semifinals, which guarantees him a spot in Hershey.
215 pounds, Braden Welsh of Fort Cherry, a fall and 3 tech falls to win WPIAL gold. He does it over Braden Suter of Carlinton, who was the number 6 seed coming in, but he knocks off Brennan Bressinger of Quaker Valley 4-2 in the semis, and then he beats Colton Carlson of Laurel 5-2 in the semifinals in order to advance to the final against Welsh.
I'll tell you what, Suter had himself a Slayton Williams type performance here at 215 pounds. I think he wrestled really well, beating Bressinger, who's a very tough freshman, and then to beat Colin Carlson, who I had as, I think I may have said he was a clear favorite to get to the finals in our last show in our sectional or WPIAL preview. So Suter made me look pretty dumb, which a lot of wrestlers have in the past and will continue to. Braden Welsh is despite coming up in weight, I don't know what he's weighing in at. I would assume it's probably around like 195-ish. So he's giving up maybe 20 pounds to some of these guys. He just looks dominant. I mean, he just looks like he's head and shoulders above the rest. Carlson does come back for third, and I think he does that in pretty dominating fashion. But yeah, this one was kind of crazy. I didn't know how it was going to shake out. Luke Boylan beats Bressinger, who they had a couple tight matches already this year. Bressinger then injury defaults to Shannon. So I don't know how healthy he is. So that's going to be a question mark when we talk about the regional tournament. But I think Welsh is definitely the favorite here.
Yeah, and he goes in as the number 1 seed in the Southwest region, and you got to like his chances to potentially win the tournament and obviously advance on to Hershey. But what about the rest of the WPL crew here at 215?
Yeah, I don't know. As we get heavier in weight, I feel like it gets a little bit more unpredictable. Again, it depends on how healthy Bressinger is. Him and Tyler Lobb could be a really good match. I look at that one as potentially determining if Bressinger wins that, he makes it into the state tournament. But Lobb is, I mean, he's pretty solid. He's a 3-time regional qualifier now. He's a senior. You're going against a freshman, so I feel like that maybe favors Lobb a little bit, but that's a winnable match, again, depending on health. Josh Ryan is one of the best in the state. I feel like Luke Boylan got a tough draw with him. Josh Ryan is pretty solid, and I think the winner of Boylan and Ryan makes the semifinals, even though Caden Shannon has split matches with Boylan this year. Beck has a very tough match with Hagens. Suter has a tough match with Stuchel from River Valley. Carlson's got he's favored there against Yatsky, but Yatsky's not bad. Yeah, I don't know. Outside of Welsh, I don't feel super confident just based on the matchups, because I could see a lot of these guys losing that first match. I could see Shannon winning that first match, but then I could see Boylan lose to Ryan make it to the semifinals. I could see Lobb beating Bressinger, but again, I could see that flip too. Hagens is going to beat Beck. Suter and Stuchel, I think that's a toss-up. I think Carlson is favored against Yatsky, but I don't know if he can get past Landon Erdman. Landon Erdman's been really, really solid this year, and those Huntington guys have wrestled almost 50 matches. So I don't know. You're going to ask me how many. Two. They get 2.
Yeah, I think it's that Suter Carlson, potential if they both drop in the quarters could be a match that ends up, okay, winner's going to get in the top 6, and loser may not be able to get to Hershey. So I know they take 7, but it's just one of those things that could end up being a match that decides it. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a fair assessment. 285 pounds, Colin White of West Green. He was your champion. He won 10-4 over Henry Barbish of Carleton in the finals. Alex Rusilko of Bentworth came in as the number 6 seed, had an ultimate tiebreaker win over Casey Wilson of Laurel in the quarterfinals, and ends up placing in third.
Yeah, so I mean, Rusilko was the one that I, much like we talked about with Williams and Suter before us. He had the best tournament, right? Beating Casey Wilson, who has just been so damn solid for Laurel this year, and he's got a lot of good wins under his belt from state ranked guys. For Alex to come out and get that win in ultimate tiebreaker, I thought was critical for him. He gets an injury default and then beats Parker Cunningham by major. Cunningham, on the flip side, beats Casey Wilson 15-3. So we're talking about some pretty big margins of winning here. I think Colin White is established himself as a very good heavyweight here, beating Parker Cunningham and then beating Barbish, who's been, again, just really solid and consistent for Carleton. But Rusilko is the one that I have, kind of circled as like, hey, how's he wrestling? And can he take this momentum into the regional tournament? Because I'll say this, the Southwest region at heavyweight is absolutely stacked. You look at the state rankings and our top 35. I don't know why I did top 35, but I did because I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. Just like Ken Wonderly. But I really... the Southwest has at least 12 guys ranked in the top 35. It could be more. I'll have to count. I'm not super good at counting, but they've got at least 12 guys ranked in the top 35 here, and I think it's the depth shows, right, and the WPIAL is a big part of that.
When you look at the top 7 for the Southwest region, you got to like Colin White from West Green and his chances to advance. But when you look at the rest of the guys, you talk about that depth, who can kind of sneak in there as far as the next person up and be able to get to Hershey.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the question. Colin White and Jonah McCoy are both on the same side. White's 6 in the state, McCoy's 8. So both guys that were state qualifiers last year, different weights. McCoy's at heavyweight. So that's a 6 versus 8 on the bottom half. So you got to think, okay, I think there's 3 spots pretty well established, right? With White on the bottom, Holmes on the top. Right, Rowan Holmes is a 2-time state medalist going to Lehigh. I think Barbish is another one that is pretty favored, but Caleb Rodriguez from Bishop McCourt, like he's a guy who has a win over Holmes and a win over McCoy, but he's also taken some losses this year, and he seems to, kind of come in spurts, but. Brambley's tough too. Like that's a really tough matchup for Rusilko from Bentworth. Like I don't like that matchup for him because I really like Brambley. I think he's pretty tough. He was regional 7th last year, so just missed a trip to Hershey. Kelton Bonnell from Juniata is pretty solid, so that's a tough matchup with Cunningham. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely think 2. I definitely think they'll get Barbish and White through. If Casey Wilson wrestles like he should, right, I think he can beat Caleb Rodriguez, which would set up a very better path for him than losing that first match and then having to go through a bunch of guys that you may have already wrestled. I like Ryvan Aldi from Richland too. That's a tough matchup for Teddy Gray. I don't know. I want to say 2, but could be 3. I don't know. It's tough, man. The Southwest, these guys are all very, very close, and it's heavyweight, so you just really don't know what to expect. None of these, all these guys can beat each other up, and they have beat each other up this year. So that's the other thing. Like it's just you don't know what to expect. I don't know. District 6 is pretty tough with Holmes coming in at District 5, but then you had McCoy, Rodriguez, Brambley from Everett too. So District 6 and District 5 are really tough. The WPIAL's going to have, while they're good, they're going to have a tough time.
Yeah, it could easily just be one going, and it could be three. I think that's
Right,
kind of
right,
the bar.
100%. Yeah, and White could be in third and fourth. He very well could not make the finals.
Yeah, that's like to your point, right? With it being heavyweight, these are going to be a lot of 1-2-1 overtime matches that are going to take place. So you'll see several of those. You'll see some falls that you're not expecting, right? Okay, I was not that was not on the bingo card. I thought it was going to be closer than that,
Right,
but at the end of the day, it's you know there's the opportunity to get, I would say, at least three through. It's just a matter of how they do with some of these individual matchups. So should be fun to see this weekend in Altoona. Double A Southwest Regional, always a great tournament to check out. So Jeff, we're through Double A, and good thing we decided to wait for tomorrow because I don't know if anybody wants to hear another hour of us talking.
absolutely not. I'm falling asleep. You're falling asleep. Your computer's about to die. Spencer Lee just lost, so yeah, it's not a good night.
Yeah, anytime Spencer Lee loses, that's it for Jeff. So
That's it. I
we got
throw in the towel. I'm done.
we got to
Out
put
of
a fork at
commission.
him. He's done.
I'm done.
Well, we'll be back tomorrow for those who are looking for the updates on the AAA side. We'll be breaking down the WPIAL tournament on the AAA side, and also looking at the first West Regional that's going to take place at Cannon McMillan. So we'll have that breakdown as well for you. So looking forward to that, and hope you're able to tune in. For Jeff Upson,